birtherism revamped. Yes, I think that is a great term to describe this thing that we're about to talk about, which is that, so of course, the Republicans don't like Kamala. You know, they don't want her to be in office. She's a black woman. She's also South Asian, I think. And I mean, she's a woman, which is a big part of it too. But like what they see when they look at her is a black woman, you know, similar with like Obama is half white, but people are like, oh, he's the first black president. Cause like, I guess that's the rules. If you have even slightly dark skin, it's like the one drop rule, whatever. Like you are racially considered black. Anyway, so the Republicans are trying to come up with reasons to say that Kamala is not eligible to be president. Okay. So this is a memorandum. I'm going to go ahead and say it's a resolution. It's a memo from the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, the NFRA. They have apparently unanimously adopted the position that Kamala Harris is ineligible to be president based on several things. And we're going to focus in on one of them. So, whereas, oh my God, it was bigger before. The constitutional qualifications for presidential eligibility as written in Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5 states, no person except a natural-born citizen shall be eligible or a citizen of the United States at the time of adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Whereas an originalist and strict constructionist understanding of the Constitution in the Scalia and Thomas tradition, as well as precedent-setting U.S. Supreme Court cases cited below, have found that a, quote, natural-born citizen is defined as a person born on American soil of parents who are both citizens of the United States at the time of the child's birth. So I think that this is actually not how we do things now. I think the way that we do things now is like your parents don't have to be citizens of the United States. If you come here, if your parents come here and you are born here, you are automatically granted citizenship. But this is what they're trying to push back on. So they do cite the Dred Scott v. Sandford case, which we will get into in a minute. If you don't know what that is, which I was not intimately familiar with what that is, we're going to get into it in a minute. So they say several states, candidates, and major political parties have ignored this fundamental presidential qualification, including candidates Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Kamala Harris, whose parents were not citizens at the time of their birth. So parents were not citizens at the time of their birth is kind of that's the thing that they're really going with here. But they cited the Dred Scott decision, which is the one that we're going to highlight here. The Dred Scott decision was, I'm on the Britannica website. So it was a legal case where the Supreme Court ruled that a slave who had resided in a free state and territory where slavery was prohibited was not thereby, entitled to his freedom, that African Americans were not and never could be citizens of the United States, and that the Missouri Compromise, which had declared free all territories west of Missouri and north of latitude 3630, was unconstitutional. So basically, they're citing a court case. So this is like, by legal scholars, this is considered to be like the worst Supreme Court case ever. Like, this is the worst Supreme Court decision ever, according to scholars. Because, part of this is that African Americans could never be citizens of the United States, effectively. And like, if you go into the background of this, a little bit more details, look at it. It's been cited in particular as the most egregious example in the court's history of wrongly imposing a judicial solution on a political problem. Famously, this has been characterized as the court's greatest, quote, self-inflicted wound. So if you go into it, like, it's about a slave who was owned by someone in Missouri named Dred Scott. The enslaved man was called Dred Scott, and the person who claimed to own him took him to some other states like Illinois and the Wisconsin territory, and they were like, he was like, the Dred Scott ended up suing later to be like, because I have been in a free state where slavery is illegal, like I can't be a slave anymore, basically. And so that's what this has worked up to. Like, that's why this worked up to the Supreme Court, because things went back and forth with the Missouri Supreme Court. And actually, the Missouri Supreme Court in this case undid one of its long-standing precedents called once free, always free. So the Missouri had this long-standing doctrine of like, once you've been freed, you can't be enslaved again, which is so a lower state court declared that Scott is a free man based on his like having traveled to states where slavery was illegal. Because yeah, it's so weird. This like the fact that you could own slaves in Missouri and then go to Illinois with your enslaved person and to a place where slavery is illegal and have that not be like your slave should be freed at that point. Like it makes the most sense that it's like, no, this is illegal here. So you can't like keep me as a possession in this state where it's illegal. Mitternacht and I are here to ask you to hit like on the video. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe. Click the bell if you feel like it. You don't have to though. Feel free to check out the other links in the description because I sell merch like this cute tank top. I'm running a GoFundMe to try to move 2,000 miles across the country to a place where I have rights. And I have a Patreon he's smashing his face against my face. So I just thought that this was really funny. And like, obviously it's very serious, but it's very funny that they're basically like this Republican organization is saying like, because of this court case, which is considered the worst in all of American history as far as the Supreme Court goes, which declared that no person of African descent, like no African Americans, no black people can ever be citizens of the United States. That's what the federal ruling was at that time. Like the law of the land across this entire nation officially was that black people cannot be citizens of the United States. So like, not only are they saying that there is a very strict interpretation of the law that you could say is like a natural born citizen is defined as a person who's born on American soil and both of their parents are citizens of the United States, because Kamala's parents were not both American citizens when she was born here. But it's like not only that, but also because she's black, she can't be a citizen. Are they aiming to reinstate slavery? I wouldn't put it past Republicans too. Okay, here's the deal. Slavery is legal as punishment for a crime. Slavery has never been fully gotten rid of. We have slavery. That's why black people are disproportionately imprisoned for committing the same crimes as white people, because, and that's like the whole concept behind the school to prison pipeline, which you may have heard that phrase before. The whole idea there, the whole concept is slavery, chattel slavery is not legal. But if you convict someone of committing a crime, slavery is on the table. So when we're looking at like who is being imprisoned at what rates, slavery is legal, and it still disproportionately impacts black people and other people of color. Like anybody who's brown, really. Yeah, Trump can't wait to deport all the quote illegals. That's one of the things that we covered in the Project 2025 video is like, they're trying to control language by calling these people undocumented instead of illegals. Like, I mean, mostly the reason that Democrats have made that change is because calling them illegals is like dehumanizing, and it renders them like their existence is illegal, as opposed to they just haven't gotten their papers in order yet, which most of them, like, again, most people who are here illegally, quote unquote, is because they had paperwork and they didn't renew it, or like something happened in the process of them renewing it that got it, like canceled it. So it's usually people who flew here, not people crossing the border, like crossing the border in the night, whatever. It's mostly people who flew here and who had work papers, like a green card, and it just expired. So yeah, I don't know. It's like, anything they can do to obscure things, anything they can do to say, you know, people of color or black folks or whoever, like, oh, you know, we don't want these folks to be in our government. Because, yeah, someone else in chat said, like, yeah, okay, so Kamala is ineligible, but Trump is eligible. Like a convicted felon versus a woman whose parents weren't born here, which obviously that is going to impact that's going to impact people of color more than it's going to impact white people for the most part. Jealous of my melanin, so they want to keep me down. True. Oh, that's fire. Young Black Economist in the chat says, my ancestor trolled and created fake documents that say he was born in a free state and got away with it. He was smart. I'm glad he broke the law. Yeah, absolutely. That's like literally like be gay, do crimes, but minus the be gay part. You know what I mean? Like if your existence is criminalized, then you don't really have any choice but to like lean into it a bit. And like, yeah, sometimes breaking the law is the just thing to do. If a law is unjust, then sometimes the just thing to do is break the law. Slavery was unjust. So any slaves, like literally slaves who ran away under the Underground Railroad, I literally almost said Yellow Brick Road and I had to really stop myself. Slaves who ran away, they were breaking the law. They were stealing from their alleged owners, basically. And that's the right and just thing to do. Like, honestly, I don't even know that being violent toward the alleged slave owners would have been something that I could morally condemn. I feel like in this political climate, that is the kind of situation that we're in, though, where people would be like, well, I know that you were a slave, and I know that your mom was being sexually assaulted, and that you were being whipped every day and forced to do labor and given food and not allowed to leave the plantation. But really, I think it's a problem that you killed the person who said that they owned you. Like, actually, they go low, we go high, okay? Like, honestly, I do kind of think that if we were still dealing with this level of like chattel slavery in today's day and age, that there would be moral condemnation on enslaved people for violently retaliating against the people who said that they were like, we own you and we're doing all these messed up things. I don't think people get sometimes how very, very, very uncool it was. It wasn't just being enslaved that was the problem. It wasn't just being forced to do labor that was the problem. It was also like the violence that was being done against them, the stealing of the children and the sexual assault, like all of these things. It was particularly horrendous. Like, I know things that like I don't even want to educate like the teenagers in my life who aren't learning this stuff in school. I don't even want to tell them some of the things I know about how white people treated black people and like just did whatever they wanted to their bodies. You know, it's like that like teenagers shouldn't have to know, I feel, but also that it's important to know so that they don't take it lightly. That slavery was horrific. But yes, of course, being enslaved on its own is an act of violence, even if you're not being like assaulted or whatever. So yeah, someone claiming to own you and control you is fundamentally violent. Oh God. In a TikTok debate today, someone tried telling the host and I that there were, quote, good slave owners. Yeah, I hope that you did go in on them because that's insane. But yeah, so this Supreme Court case, Dred Scott versus Sandford, which very, very, very morally wrongly declared that black people can't be citizens of the United States and that like being in a free state doesn't free you if you're an enslaved person. Like, yeah, that's bad. Yeah, the myth that Washington had wooden teeth, they were actually slave teeth from human beings. Yeah. The narrative, you got to keep the narrative up. Oh yeah, Martin Luther King quote, I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to, quote, order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. MLK warned us. He warned us And yet we are still here. And yet here we still are. Yeah. Like, how many Democrats are even going to pay attention to the fact that the Republicans are trying to say that Kamala is not a citizen of the United States? Like, she's not a natural born citizen. Anyway, I just thought that was ridiculous, and I wanted to cover it because it's just, I mean, ultimately, I feel like it's kind of silly. It's a very serious threat to the, like, outcome of this election. Like, Kamala likely going to win, in my humble opinion. So if she wins, and then there's, like, challenges to whether she even qualifies as a citizen based on this extremely racist decision back in 1857, you know, we're looking down the barrel of some problems here. Yeah, they're doing the birtherism thing. Her birth certificate, her legal documentation is seemingly floating around because, like, we're doing this, like, I guess if you're not white, there's, like, an assumption that you were not born here and you have to provide your documentation. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's all the memes I've got for that. That's all the commentary I think I have on that one. Yeah, wouldn't put it past the Supreme Court to hold this one up. Thank you so much to all my patrons, but especially Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rovog, Jack, Amanda B., Michelle Frateroli, Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Danielle McDonald, DZXN, Elavi Nobody, Pastel Infinity, Suzanne Maynard, Nova, Desi Quiche, Celeste, Athiette, Jamie Jam, Sojo, Bean, Kevin Young, Mr. Atheist, Liam Hodgson, Elizabeth Bartell, and Jericho.